One. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Second City Detroit interview series. I'm here with Mr. David Razowsky. David, how you doing today? Happy Saturday.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Good to see you here. David Razowsky is the former artistic director of the Second City Los Angeles. He's the host of the award-winning podcast ADD Comedy with David Razowsky. His teaching and performing has taken him all over the world, from the US to Australia, Austria, Ireland, Italy, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, the UK, New Zealand. I could barely count all the countries. And he also recorded a TEDx Auckland Talk as well. In addition, he's an actor at the Second City. He's worked with the comedy greats, the Martin Short, Steve Carell's, Stephen Colbert, Rachel Dratch, Chris Farley, Amy Sedaris. You hard candy fans out there? Or no, that was a Stranger with Candy.
Stranger Candy.
Stranger Candy. He's directed the Second City Mainstage, the Second City Hollywood, Second City Detroit, which we're going to get into today, as well as the Second City National Touring Company, as well as 2 productions with Boom Chicago and Amsterdam. David is also a consultant for Dreamworks, a teacher at the Steppenwolf Theater, and an adjunct faculty at California State University. In addition, David is also a member of the Reduced Shakespeare Company and has performed at the Kennedy Center for the complete works of William Shakespeare Abridged. So, David, welcome to the Second City Detroit series. How are you?
Good. That was nice to go through. I saw my light flash before me.
Light flash before your eyes. We're still here. So it's great to have you here. Like I said, you're one of our first interview. We're about 4 to 5 interviews of different alums, kind of going around and had different experiences and encounters with Second City Detroit. So I'd like to ask you just the first question. What do you typically tell people when they do? It may not be every day, but when they do ask you about Second City Detroit, what usually comes to mind?
What immediately comes to mind is the cast. And what an unbelievable group of people that was. Second City's casting in Detroit was fantastic. Well, also Detroit is just an amazing city for talent, and the people that I was working with over there, every single one of them. And I did 10 shows at Second City. I directed, as you said, I've directed a lot. I was the artistic director, and that show that I did at Second City Detroit was fantastic for one reason, and that was the cast. The cast was great. That's what I remember, and I'm sure we'll get into other stuff too. But if you look at the picture, of our show, which is called 19th Nervous Breakdown, we're going to name it something else, and we were told not. We were told not to, and we can get into that later if you'd like. But it was that cast was phenomenal, and they were fearless. But y'all in Detroit are fearless. You're all fearless, and you all have great voices, and I don't just mean the way that you sound. I also mean where your heart is, and because it ain't an easy place to live, and because it ain't an easy place to, because it's not an easy place to live, it might be getting better. It is certainly getting better now than it was when I was directing there and the years before that. But when you come from that sort of environment, you learn how to be ballsy, and everybody in that cast was ballsy and talented and smart and funny and loved each other.
Man, that you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, that's just so I can kind of feel the unity and everything that's there. You're referring to the picture you texted me earlier?
Yeah. That picture, and that picture was who it is that we are. If you take a look at that, and I'm sure you'll show that later, but you look at the way there's love in that picture, and you could just sense it. There's just love and respect, and it was just one. They tried anything, they would try any idea that they had. I loved it.
Man, so much to unpack there. So in addition to, did you perform with Second City Detroit in addition to like directing with the shows, or was it a little bit of both? Or tell us about kind of your improv.
So I at that time, let's see, I think at that time I was performing around the world in and teaching directing around the world. So when I was hired there, I think I'd just come off of directing at Boom Chicago and Amsterdam, 2 shows there,
Okay.
which is really interesting because at Boom Chicago, I met Jordan Peele. I directed Jordan Peele in a show,
Mm-hmm.
and at in Second City Detroit, I directed Keegan Michael Key, and they didn't know each other back then. They didn't know each other, and just superstars. Anyway, that's I'm getting off your question. Um, it's just so great, so great. It's so good talking to you, man.
Yeah.
It was the
All coming back, right?
it's all coming back, and I
Yeah.
knew it was all going to come back. I knew I was going to sit here and go, oh, then that happened, that happened, that happened. But uh, I was hired to direct, and I directed, and I think somebody couldn't make it for a show one weekend, and so because I was the director, I knew all the parts, and I just went in and played with them. Uh, but I didn't at that time. I wasn't performing with the Second City. I was just directing and teaching with the Second City, and I think that was
Mhm.
actually before I became the artistic director of Second City in LA, Hollywood.
Mhm.
So I was just directing them at that time.
Yeah. Well, so much history. So, like, the next question I would like to ask you is, what would you say was some of your? I know we kind of touched on, like, what would you say was like typically a life in the week of I guess Second City Detroit performer in general. Whether it was in Detroit or Chicago or LA. What would like
Well,
say life?
I think I,
Yeah.
I think it's similar, but all that I know is I knew what my life was like when I was there,
Mm-hmm.
um, and of course I knew what my life was like in Chicago when I was in a resident company in Chicago, and what my life was like
Mm-hmm.
when I was directing out here in LA. A typical day for me was I was staying at this shitty hotel at the corner of Bagley and Cass. It
Mm-hmm.
was a Ramada Inn, and it was there wasn't anything there. I mean, the corner of Bagley and Cass, right?
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
it's a high rise. I don't know if it's still there, but in whenever I directed that show in the mid '90s or something like that, downtown was abandoned. Downtown
Was.
Detroit was totally abandoned. And when I say totally abandoned, I'm not screwing around. Like you could walk for blocks, and there were buildings that were between 2 stories and 20 stories that no one was in. Am I getting that right,
No,
Hayward?
no, you're right. Because
Yeah,
I did my undergrad at Wayne State, so I lived for quite a few years in Midtown. And
right,
even for me, this was more like in the mid 2000s. But even then, it was like there
right.
wasn't a lot going on. It was still at the
There wasn't.
suburban flight
Yeah.
was, so the city wasn't really where it was. And.
No. So
Yeah,
so when I was there was nothing going on. And when I say
yeah.
nothing going on, I mean, and again, these buildings are gorgeous and coming from
Hmm.
Chicago and loving architecture and being downtown and look at these buildings and going, why doesn't anybody live here? And the people
Hmm.
mover was there, and it would just like hit one spot, and you're like, "What's this doing? Why
It
would
was
I
a
want
cute little bar crawl, little go with some friends, bar crawl a few places, but you weren't getting around the city with people like
No, no, I wasn't doing, no, I couldn't do anything. I didn't have a car or anything. But anyway, so I lived there. And so every day was like, where am I going to eat? Because there's no place to eat. And then I would go to the theater, and the theater was in a building called Hockeytown,
Hmm.
which is owned by the Little Caesars Pizza people.
Yeah.
And Second City had the Illiches. Second City had a contract with them. They were partnered to create the Second City, and I would go over there, and the theater was huge. It was really a beautiful. They created this beautiful theater in the back of. So you had to walk through Hockeytown. So
Hmm.
Hockeytown was like I don't know. Hockeytown is a building that was an
Hmm.
homage to hockey, and you would walk through the front door and you would go, this is Second City, because directly in front of you, where it
Hmm.
should be the Second City box office and pictures of alumni, was, of course, a Zamboni. It was just this
Mhm.
huge Zamboni that you had to move your way through in order to find the Second City. You'd go over there and we'd just rehearse. We would get together, we'd laugh, we'd have coffee, we'd sit in the theater, we'd talk about what we do, we'd get up backstage and we'd go, what are we going to do today? And I would just put them through the paces of like, let's do a scene here, let's start a scene here. And then after a while, we started piecing these things together. But it was really like, it was during the day we'd be rehearsing, and at night they would do the old show. So has
Mhm.
anybody described to you how Second City shows work?
A little bit, but I can always use a refresher though for
Okay,
those listening. Yeah.
so so a Second City show is a two-act show, and you can edit this. A Second City show is a three-act show. The first
Mhm.
two acts are of written sketch material. A lot of people think that Second City is an improv theater, but it's a sketch
Mhm.
comedy theater. So the
Right.
first two acts are sketches, are two acts of sketch comedy that were directed by somebody else. Someone else directed it, and I come in and I look at that material and I work with a cast, and we have 2 months to write a show. There's a third act, and the third act is an empty act that we can do whatever we want with it. It's an
Mhm.
improv act. And if you're in Chicago and you're around North and Wells, I would say go to Second City after the second act. It's free and it's
Mhm.
the greatest improvisers, I will say, in the country. The greatest improvisers in the country. You get to see them for free, and you get to sit and watch them. And the third act is usually reserved when you're writing a show for a director to come in and put pieces that they were working on during the day into that act to see how the audience responded to that. If the material was
Mhm.
good, and this is a typical day for me, if the material was good, if a particular scene was good, a couple of scenes were good, you would take them, and the show's recorded, so you would look at the recordings the next day, and you would go, let's work on that scene, and people would write down what
Mhm.
they did in that scene, and then I would put it up on its feet, and we'd work it out, and then we'd put it into the show that night, and until it honed itself so well that we would take out a piece from the old show and put in a new piece, and then after a while. You get all these new pieces in the show, and then you open the show, and it becomes a Second City show. Um, and my job was to create that piece there with different people. And like I said, some of these people in this cast would do anything that you'd want just to do something fun and funny. Uh, and all of them were fantastic. They worked really, really well together. And as a director at the Second City, I'll speak for everybody that
Mhm.
was in that cast. That was one of the greatest experiences because everybody loved each other. And if you've got a cast of people who love each other, you've got a show that will practically write itself. If
Man.
everybody up there is having a good time, the
Mhm.
audience is going to have a good time. And if you're a director that knows how to get the people up there to have a good time and create material that they're happy with and proud of, then that's you're going to get great reviews, and you're going to have people come to that show forever.
That's such great insight, especially when you talk about how like really these shows, it wasn't like Second City LA or Chicago. It was like, oh, here's the template. You follow it just like a McDonald's franchise. You just do A, B, C, and D. It's like you kind of went in there. What works, what doesn't. Oh, that second, third show, we can kind of take this, move that over here. It's kind of like you're kind of reverse engineering or course correcting and kind of just molding it into your own. That's
Well,
amazing.
every show is distinct because the characters are. Every show is distinct because the actors are distinct, and the
Mhm.
actors are distinct because the owners of Second City or the people that are producing the show, they look at every single person that they put in that show, and they say, okay, we're looking for a tall, quirky guy. And so they'll go, okay, we have the touring company people, and we have, Keegan is a tall, quirky guy who's got legs. Legs in this case meaning he's deep. I mean, he's deep.
Mhm.
That guy's deep. He is an actor. He's an actor. He's a comedian. He's a writer, and he is one of the most charming people you will ever meet in your life. So you've got him. You've got the white guy. You got Kirk
Mhm.
Hanley, who's the pasty white guy, and I love Kirk. I love him so much. I love him so much. Did I say that with love in my heart? Because
All
he's
good,
funny.
man.
He's funny. He's connected, and Kirk. Kirk. you've got Kirk, you've got Mark Warzeka, who ended up running Second City in LA, and you've got those two white guys, and then you got Antoine, and you've got Keegan, and you have this mixture, and you've got this beautiful woman Cherry, who's smart and funny, and you've got this quirky little this Mary Beth Monroe, she will do anything. She will do anything to commit to that scene. So, whoever put that cast together, and I think I have some idea. Whoever put that cast together, I think Joe James maybe put that cast together. Whoever put that cast together, it was Joe. They knew what they were doing, and they knew what they were doing.
Man, and it all came together. I'm a big Mary Beth Moore. Is it Mary Beth Moore?
Mary Beth Monroe.
Mary Beth Monroe, because I remember I first saw her, and I think NBC did sort of a similar sort of Whose Line Is It Anyway? Thank God You're Here.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, she's on Workaholics. So she's been a fan of mine for a while.
The part that she played on Workaholics was, she played a part of a person who didn't give a damn about anything that was happening. I mean, she was right. Yeah, Mary Beth, powerhouse, really truly a powerhouse there. So, what was a typical day? That was a typical day, and then I would watch the show, and then I'd give notes at the end of the show, and then I would walk to my lonely, quiet, ugly, horrible, cold hotel room at the Ramada Inn. God.
What a day, what a day.
What a day. And when I had a day off, I don't know, what do you do downtown Detroit when there's nothing there?
Yeah.
Except walk around. And I remember walking through this one area, and there was it was a garage in this kind of 1920s building, a tall 1920s building. And I kind of poked in the garage, and there was, the entrance to the garage, and I'm looking, I'm going, that's the fanciest garage I'd ever seen. And I did a little studying, and it used to be a movie palace. And what they did was they removed the lobby, made it a driveway, took all the seats out, and they took a ramp from where the seats were to the stage, and they parked cars there. It became a parking lot. And you walk in, and you look up there, and it's the most ornate ceiling. And I was like, oh man, this city is dead. It was dead. It was dead. Yes. And that's a major part. That's a major part of the heart of Detroit. That they got the beat back after the riots in the 60s. Tough.
Yeah. I mean, with Detroit, I mean, it's been the comeback city for a while. We're in this kind of new era. But yeah, even like I said, my era was more the mid 2000s. I was going to Wayne State studying film, so I can only imagine. It was kind of like you had to find places to go, things to see. The parking garage Opera House that they shot a scene from 8 Mile there with Eminem. So that's
right, they did.
Now I need to go back there because I think it may not be quite around anymore, but I have to double check because there's so much changing with downtown.
Yeah, I think we did Second City Detroit. We did some. I took some publicity shots. Somehow we got in there, and I was able to take those shots. And I was like, I would love to find those photographs. I think I gave to Second City, so they have them somewhere.
Yeah, who knows? Gotta maybe dig a little deep. Might be floating on the internet somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. It's the comeback city for a long time. And I was there several years ago. I was there 5 or 6 years ago. To work with some alumni over there that have gone on to other things, really great things. And the city's changed, and there's restaurants, and there's people walking around like pre-pandemic, but it was like, this feels right. We have a choice of restaurants. Yeah, finally. And you've got a world-class art museum over there. The Detroit Art Institute, the Art Institute of Detroit.
Yeah, DIA, Detroit Institute of Art.
Detroit Institute of Art is gorgeous. The Diego Rivera mural, and it's just an amazing city. It's an amazing city.
Yeah, so much there, so
I'm
much.
really, I gotta tell you, I gotta just clean saying this. I am so proud of the work that I did at that Second City, and it was an honor to be asked to work there, and it was an honor to work with these people here. And I left Detroit just being madly in love with everybody, with the city, and with the cast and with the show. It really is a highlight of my. I have a really deep career, and I love it, and it's a
Mhm.
highlight, and that says a lot about it.
And well, that really hit the nail on the head, man. I could definitely feel the it's all coming
Mhm.
back, man. So what would you say, like, as far as like, since like moving on from Second City Detroit, tell us about some of the other, whether it's the other Second City chapters or maybe some other troops. What have you gone on to get involved with, and what did you take from Second City Detroit and sort of take with you as far as what
One
you
of
went
the, one
on
of
to
the
do?
one of the things is the appreciation of a great cast.
Mhm.
Um, I left there. I left there and I became the artistic director of Second City in LA.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I want to do is put a cast together there because they didn't have a resident company show there. So I put a cast together there of Second City
Mhm.
alumni here in LA. And that was another cast. It's like I love these people so much, and the material's really funny. We did archival material, so they didn't come up with their own material, but it was really really great. And then after that, we I directed Second City in the main stage in Chicago,
Mhm.
and that was a challenge to me because I didn't the cast we didn't get along, we didn't hit it, and I'm like,
Mhm.
how could we not hit it? You know, like I love these
Mhm.
people. What's the difference here? You know,
Right.
so that's a chapter in my life of going. I dropped the ball on that one, but my takeaway was this: the importance of a good ensemble that loves working with each other.
Mhm.
And that was an example. I think everybody, as I said, everybody in that cast probably walked away and went, I don't think we're ever going to have something this good again. I just don't think we're going to have anything this good again.
Yeah,
Um,
lightning can't strike twice. You can't always just force duplicate it. Sometimes it's just the right place, the right magic at
right,
the right time.
right. And also, yeah, right time. And so another thing that I learned there was a good like how to pick a good cast because what was the common denominator between all those people was their love for each other, their openness to make anything work, their commitment, their non-judgment,
Mhm.
and again, I believe that all of that came from because they're all of those people are Michiganders, and all of those people came from Detroit, and like what do you got? We're gonna jump like hell
Mhm.
into this thing. And so another thing I took was surround yourself with people who are strong. Surround yourself with people who are open and love you. Surround yourself with people that are fearless, and is that's a great starting recipe for a fantastic show and a really good time.
Dude, so many nuggets, so many takeaways. I think a lot of people listening can take what you're saying right now, apply it to their current acting group or improv, whatever they're currently involved in. That's key.
Yeah,
That's key right there, having that foundation there. 'Cause without that trust, without that level of camaraderie, it could. I'm sure it could kind of you could kind of tell. You can see it in the show. You can see it in the dynamic. So that's amazing. So as we wrap up, we got a couple left. What are maybe some things coming up that you're excited about? Some projects you're working on? I know you mentioned. I know you do some work over at. You do some consulting work at Dreamworks. You teach over at the Steppenwolf. You got a lot going on as far as teaching and productions. Let the audience in on what you're currently working on right now.
I've been since the pandemic. I've been teaching online classes, and I have not taught anything but online classes. So the past 2 years, 2.5 years, my goodness, it's long.
Mhm.
I have a really strong online improv presence
Okay.
in workshops. So I've been doing that. They can go to my website or go to my website and connect to me through my website,
Okay.
davidrazowsky.com. And I am really, really close to finishing a book called A Subversive's Guide to Improvisation.
Hmm.
And so that's the thing that, like, when I get off the horn with you, I got to head right back there where it's mission control and get back and do a little more writing. So if people can look within the next year for
Hmm.
A Subversive's Guide to Improvisation, uh, that is going to be an exciting thing. It's a book about memoir. There's some Detroit things in there. There's my philosophy, my methodology, and exercises, and I'm really, really excited about it. So that takes up most of my brain pan area.
Okay, great. Yeah, definitely keep me posted on the book. And I must ask this. Currently, I split my time between Michigan and LA. I'm in Michigan right now for the summer. I plan to go back
Mhm.
to LA in the fall. So my question is, what would you, I mean, since you started teaching improv online, what are maybe some of the advantages that you didn't see from like doing improv online versus kind of the pros and cons of like being in person, being next to somebody, be able to touch somebody, see somebody, versus what are some unexpected pros to doing improv, teaching those improv classes and acting classes online?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened when we went online is it became something that improvisation became something that was done on stage to something that is now cinematic because we have a
Mm,
relationship with the camera. And I think a lot of people really have a hard time with the fact that this is, if you're working online, it's about cinema. It's about the photo. It's about the dynamic between you and the camera.
mm,
And we can do things, the way that I sit in front of the camera is very defined. It's a picture that you wouldn't see if you're on stage, because if you're on stage, you're looking at somebody, and then you've got the chairs around them, and you've got the walls around them, and it's probably in
mm,
in a classroom. But here, we can create this thing here if there's no background, uh, and it becomes more of a motion picture, more of a
mm,
connection through that. And because of that, yes, you can't see my body, but when I'm improvising with you, you can see subtlety in my eyes, in my eyebrows, in my gesture,
mm,
my facial gestures. A move that would be missed if we were on stage because the stage is so big is seen now. So this little move that I'm about to make, that matters. And
mm,
if you're a fan of cinema, you know that this guy is not this guy. And so the work has become more defined for me, just for me. And I could probably teach every day. I teach about 8 to 11 classes a week. And I've been doing this for probably 4 years. And I
wow.
love
I've
it.
never seen one break it down like that because first there were people like I met a couple of buddies who were taking classes, LA improv classes where it was like, oh well, I want to wait till it goes back in person. But the way you broke that down, I think a lot of people aren't aware of those nuances.
I think a lot of people come in, they come in, and I think a lot of people that I know, teachers, would come in at the beginning. It's like, I don't want to work online. I just can't work online. Don't know how to work online. I'm like, it's not that you don't, I'm sorry. It's not that you don't want to work online. It's just that you don't want to put the time in to figure out what is it that you have and how does it fit into this. Because you
Mm,
know what? If you want to work online, you can work online. I have never been busier. I have never been busier. Two, my work has become stronger because I'm able to work with the same actors every single day. I've got 4 classes that I've worked with for 2 years. And when I have 4 classes and I come up with my own methodology, what I teach is my methodology. It's from my book, the way that I've created these exercises over all these years of teaching, directing, performing. So I'm looking at all this. It's like, if I can work with the same people every, once a week or twice a week, my methodology is going to be stronger. And if my methodology is stronger, then all the actors that are coming to me are going to be getting my best self because it's not going to be confusing. It's going to be me saying, this is the way that this works.
mm,
Um, and a lot of what I teach is counter to the typical improvisation that people see because I don't teach yes and. I never teach yes and. I don't teach get the who, the what, and the where out at the beginning of the scene. I don't reprimand people for asking questions or talking about people who aren't there. Um, for me, this is all about, this is an emotional journey. And if this becomes about what you're doing or where you are or what character you're playing, it's not an emotional journey. And we have to remember, and this is why that cast in Detroit was so great, is they were all superb actors who understood that all improv is acting, all sketch is acting. And Keegan is a great actor. Jordan is a great actor. Mary Beth, Cherry, Mark Warzeka, Kirk Hanley. And we also had an amazing crew, Sheva and John. Sheva was our technical director, and John Evertowski was our musical director. And it's like, these people, John is now a doctor of music, I think. And like, these are the people that we have working with us. And this shit is as serious as your life. That's the first time I swore. This is as serious as your life. And what does Detroit have? This is serious for them. They're not screwing around. You go to Chicago, it's like there's a lot. You go to Chicago, there's a lot of distractions. What are the distractions in Detroit? You know, what are those distractions?
Very little.
Very little. Very little distractions. Yeah. So I don't know what got me on that.
No, it's amazing. That was yeah. We could end it there. That was pretty much so much passion. So
well, it's been great talking to you.
yeah, and I appreciate this conversation, man. Now tell me about. I guess this is kind of a loaded question. Tell me a little bit about what improv sketch comedy, because you mentioned like acting is improv is acting. You know, what does that at its essence means to you? And then, 100 years from now, how would you want your legacy when it comes to comedy, improv to be remembered? I know it's a lot, but
at the foundation of all sketch and improv is acting. If you don't have an understanding of how to be an actor, what acting means, you're missing out on 80% of what you can potentially do. There are a lot. I was taught. So I started. I've been acting. I'm 63. I've been acting since I was 10. So I've got a lot of experience in acting. When I started improvisation, my first after I left college, I have a degree in photojournalism. So I have a photojournalism degree, and when I left college, I came back to Chicago, and Chicago theater was on fire, man. It was just on fire, and they were doing plays all over the place, and you were really able to get work. And I auditioned for a play, and I didn't get it, and the director of the play that I didn't get gave my name to somebody named John Bergman. And Bergman ran an improv company called Geese Theater Company for prisons. And so I played in non-comedic improv in prisons across the United States for a year. And that taught me how to move. That taught me how to connect. That taught me how to dance. That taught me how to create characters that were rough around the edges. And it taught me what it was like to deal with people who are incarcerated, and that changed my fucking life. And so everything that I did from that moment forward was colored by that. And so when I left that company, I started doing more theater, and then I auditioned for Improv Olympic, which did the Heralds, and Dell was teaching there. And so here's where the point that I want to make was, I was being trained by actors and theatrical directors. That's how I learned improvisation. People now are being trained by improvisers. So there's a level that's missing. And I'm not going, shame on you kids, you don't know, you don't know how you have it. It's more along the lines of, if your improv teachers have no theater experience, training, it's going to be hard. You're going to be missing out. So my advice is do plays, do shows. Not that you would ask my advice, but it was like do plays, do shows, and recognize that, as I said, all improv is acting. All of it. It's all acting. Anytime you go on stage, and one of the problems I think is that improvisers don't feel that they have permission to call themselves actors. You know? And here's the reason. What do you call a group of people who are improvising?
Actors?
No, I mean, what do you call that group?
Oh,
For
like
me,
a sketch, like an improv group, sketch group. So,
but when they say, do they say improv group? They don't say improv group. They say improv team, don't they?
improv team, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Why isn't it called an improv cast? And it's a rhetorical question, right? If somebody hires you to work with those people, that group of improvisers, who is that person? You know, what's their title? Coach. So they're not even using the title director. So we're getting further and further. Like, how can we expect them to be seen as actors when we don't call them actors?
That's a
You don't say that was I love the team that was in that Shakespeare show. You say, I love the cast. And you don't say, I love the coach of that Shakespeare. I love the coach of Romeo and Juliet. You go, I like the director of that. So where the fuck did that, excuse me, the second swear, where the fuck did we lose that? When did that stop? Because the moment that stopped, of course you're going to see people on stage that are just kind of jerking around on stage.
Yeah, well, I think some of that too, and that's a great question to really provide, because a lot of people don't think about that. I think a lot of that came from the time, because once again, I don't have like a acting or improv background, but I think a lot of that did come when sort of the Judd Apatow era, 40-Year-Old Virgin, you get a lot of these talented actors with improv experience, and just the commercial level of that success, and sort of the Knocked Up and the Superbad and the 40-Year-Old Virgin, that was great. But then it was like everybody else like, oh, I can do that. We can just improv it. And I think that's kind of where it got to the point where, oh, the improv is like this whole other thing, and acting is this. When it was like those were Steve Carell, the Paul Rudd, Seth Rogen, they were great actors first. And the improv, of course, that was that came above that foundation. That's kind of my theory. You know?
Well, but you look at that and you go, I don't know how much you know about Judd Apatow, but Judd Apatow, his background is just that guy. There's a book that he wrote that was he's written 2 books, interviews with comedians. And it talks about the way that he grew up. And what he did was he faked his way into interviews when he was like 12 or 13, he faked his way into interviews with famous comedians, saying, I'm a reporter. And so he's got an amazing background in theater. I'm talking about the people that came after that, because I know, what's her name? Lenny, what's in 40-Year-Old Virgin, the woman.
Lenny?
Lenny, yeah.
Romney?
No, the woman that played with Carell.
Oh, Catherine Keener.
Was it Catherine Keener? Or Catherine Keener? Was it Catherine Keener?
Opposite Steve Carell. She was the love interest.
Yeah. Who was?
40-Year-Old Virgin.
Yeah, Catherine Keener. I thought Catherine Keener was in Knocked Up.
No,
she totally wrong.
No, it was Catherine Keener in the 40-Year-Old Virgin.
It was Catherine Keener. So you look
at me on it, but I think I'm like 95% sure.
I bet you're right. You're right.
Catherine Heigl was in Knocked Up, I think. Don't quote me on it either. All right, we got to fact check this right now.
40-Year-Old Virgin.
Yeah, we got to fact check this.
Let's go. 40-Year-Old Virgin. Come on, man. 40-Year-Old Virgin cast.
I might be wrong. I don't know.
Catherine Keener. You're right. Catherine Keener. So Catherine Keener is a great actor. Carell, of course, I know Carell is really just quite wonderful. He's a great actor. He's a great improviser. He's really smart. He's grounded. He's focused. But all these people, certainly Carell was taught by actors. Carell and I took classes together at Second City. We toured together. Like he's a trained actor. Um, so now, again, now when I watch an improv show, and to be totally honest with you, I don't know if you're going to do any of this, and this is no secret, I hate watching improv. I just hate it. I hate it because I'm watching everybody up there and nobody is listening to anybody. Nobody is building anything. Nobody is
Yeah.
watching what somebody else is doing. It's really frustrating. And so when I say that I'm teaching, and the people that I'm teaching, the 7 or 8 or 10 or 11 classes I'm teaching a week, everybody has one thing that we understand. We are there to serve each other. We are there to listen to each other. We are there to listen to ourselves. We are there to build something that we had no idea what we're going to build. So if you got an idea of what you think the scene should be, I'm gonna take it away from you because that's not improv.
You got to get back to that art of listening.
Well, the art of listening is also the art of surprise. You're going, at the beginning, if you think that you know what's going on at the beginning, if you think you know what the scene is about when you're in this improv scene, if you think you know where the scene is going, you stop listening, and now it's going to be whatever it is that you think it's going to be, as opposed to it could be something really great because you don't know what's going to happen, And I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah, this is great insight, because I'm more on the filmmaker comedy writing side, but this is great insight for those that are out there. And it's definitely, it's great nuggets. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And the people that, and again, look at all the people that are writing, that are staff, that are showrunners, and look at where they're from. Certainly, they're from UCB and they're from Second City and they're from all these other places where you really learn how to write characters and to connect on that level. It's a really cool time. It's an amazing time. I think television has never been better.
So many possibilities and avenues. I mean,
it's also so many great shows. So many great shows, and so many voices. So many voices. Asian and Black people and Latino people and gay people and trans people. It's like everybody's got a show, and you got a show, and you got a show, and you got a show.
Oprah handing out shows.
Yeah, and I feel like this is the way to go. And so people like me, I'm a dinosaur because an old white Jewish guy, who the fuck wants that? But you look at some of the people that I've worked with, and I'm like, oh, thank God. Carlos Santos is like these people that I know that are on these great fucking shows. One of my students that I adore, Parvesh China. He's of Indian descent, and it's like, oh, good, he's got a show. And my friend Alexander Billings, who is just a goddess, a trans spirit of unbelievable force. And she's got a production company now, and she wrote a book, and it's huge. And it's just an amazing time. And we've got miles and miles and miles to fucking go.
Yeah.
But it's really good to take a look at what's going on and saying, it's what this is. 5 years ago, wasn't this?
Yeah, we still have a long way to go, like you said, but it's we can kind of look back and say, well, we made a lot of progress. So
sure. So we went, Laura and I went to see Everything Everywhere. Yes,
Michelle, that was epic. I saw that in theater too. That was
it killed me. So so you look at that and you go, all right. You look at that and you go,
I got to step it up.
Well, getting back to this is the idea of inclusivity and all that. Like, these are Asian Americans, or just people from Asian countries, Asian descent. And the movie, for me, it wasn't about that. But if you were Asian, it was about that.
Yeah.
And that is rare. What Jordan Peele's doing, where he's gone, okay, the show's about this, but if you're a Black person, you know what the show is really about.
Yeah, like there's layers to this. There's levels and layers to
Right,
this. I mean,
right. And so, where does, where does Jordan come from? Jordan came from Boom, Chicago. Jordan came from Second City. Where did Keegan come from? Keegan came from Detroit. Keegan came from Wayne State, I believe. I could be wrong. I think he
oh yeah,
went
Wayne
there.
State alum. Whoop whoop.
Yep, absolutely. He came from there. An amazing actor, director, writer. Um, Changed everything. Those two guys changed everything, you know? It was funny and it was political and it was about racism, but it was about humanity. And if you can make a show where everybody goes, that's about me too.
Hmm.
That's about me too. That's about me too. And if you don't see yourself in those, yeah.
It should be relational. It's acting is truth, and so is comedy. Comedy is truth. Truth is
Right,
comedy. Acting is truth.
right.
Oh, David. So we could go on and on, but I had a pleasure, man. This has
It's
been
really been great talking to you.
great. This has been
Right.
great. Thank you. You let us know how we can find you, and basically, I'm looking forward to more of these conversations. You know,
Love it.
so
Love it. Let me know. Let me know if I can help you in any other ways.
all right, I will. And thank you guys for watching Second City Detroit interview series, and we're out.
Bye.